Hi, I'm Corey. Welcome to Creating with Scraps. This is a kind of a mishmash video, but I'm hoping to make it short. First, I wanted to respond to a couple questions I got regarding the last video, the organization video. One, the biggest one, is somebody asked about renters tips. What can renters do? Because, obviously in my space, I use a lot of the walls. Well, no, I'm not going to take it off. Two tips for that. One, the unit on the back wall in my room, if you looked at the big, huge black unit, that is basically a really wide bookcase, and it's not mounted to anything. So my suggestion for renters that can't build things into the walls would be to use wider bookcases or big, sturdy bookcases, and use that to fill up your wall space or to take up your wall space. And the other thing is Raskog carts. I have 3 of them and I use them all the time. I've got one that's an art cart and one that's for my sewing machine. And then I've got one that's the ironing board and then some crochet thread and some miscellaneous stuff. But so there are ways around it. You can still go up and use your wall space even if you are a renter. The other tip that I had, or somebody asked about, is, well, I can't afford all the IKEA furniture or what have you. The Raskog carts are IKEA, but most of my stuff is just repurposed. The wall units are bookcases that I turned on the side and reconfigured, and the unit in back is just laminated plywood, and my U-shaped desk is some hutches that somebody had given me that I repurposed. And so I'd paint and stain. You can take old pieces, repurposed pieces, recycled things, a little bit of paint and a little bit of stain, and it brings them together really well. All right, today's video is really about Tracy's sample book. So initially You in 2022, for me, was an absolute blast. And one of the things that one of the team members did was Tracy, and she made it clear that her fun project wasn't really an idea book, it was more of a sample book. And I've been wanting to do that since I saw it on January 1st. Well, today's my birthday, and I took the day off school because I'd been ill, but I also just treated myself to a day in my craft room. And I finally did some of those things that the samples that Tracy had talked about and taught us. And part of it was inspired by a lady named Lena Blankenstein Holmstrom. On the Friendly Junk Journal People group, she had shared an album that she had made that was all about texture, but it was fabric texture. There was lace and linen and woven things and crocheted things, and the cover itself was crocheted, and it was really cool. And it made me think, well, why can't I use some of those same techniques to create texture, like Tracy's TDF sample book, but with paper? And so that's kind of where I took it today. I did some things that Tracy has this, if you're not on her Tracy Fox Creative Junk Journal group on Facebook, you really should be, because she's fabulous. It is just an absolutely wonderful group with wonderful people. And Tracy's got challenges there, and she has lists, and it's just excellent. And doing this was a whole lot of fun, just kind of freedom to create, and it was just fun. And so she's got this list, and in fact, I'll open this up and show you because I printed off the list. She's got a list telling what texture, dimension, and frills. So she's got a couple lists telling what texture, dimension, and frills are. And then she's got this list of things that you can check off that create texture, dimension, and frills. And right now, Tracy's, I believe it's her father. Tracy's birthday was a couple days ago, and her father, for her birthday, is refixing or configuring her desk. So she said she's not able to make videos. And so I thought, well, gosh, I'm going to piggyback off her video. And she kind of gave me permission. I'm going to go with the fact that she kind of gave me permission. So but you really, really should watch. Tracy's got 5 videos. The Initially You 2022, she did TDF, and she has 2 episodes there that she released New Year's Day. And since then, she's released 3 more videos. Oh gosh, let's see. Video number 3 was quick clusters with fabric and buttons. Number 4 was using book spine, and number 5 was using washi, which was inspired by Wendy, another one of the people in the collaboration. And actually, what I did today is Tracy's sample for sure, but I was also inspired by Sue and using stamps, and I was inspired by Wendy and using washi, and I used some mixed media techniques that Marley suggested, and I used some shimmer spray from, in fact I used some of this sheer shimmer spray because it was sparkly because of Gail, and Gail's using glitter. So even though it's different and it's based on what Tracy did, it's still really inspired by those other ladies. So on Tracy's list, she's made it clear, it's not an exhaustive list. There's things that aren't included. Well, I added some things that I was inspired by this Lena Blankenstein-Holmstrom, her journal, just additional things that can create texture. And now there's a whole lot more. I did not even come close to covering them all, but I added a few. One is woven, and then braille, and then netting, cross-stitch paper, embossing powder and glaze, beeswax, sanded paper, texture paste, using life ephemera, basically, instead of the made ephemera that we have, using the negative space, using label tape, both the Tim Holtz label tape and the good old-fashioned, this one's probably 30 years old, label tape gun, wallpaper, metal, and I don't remember if I put it in or not, postage stamps. So doing some more things along the lines of what Tracy did. All right, and again, I've got that up here to remind me who did what. And in Tracy's first video, she did a whole bunch of different things, collage and packaging and scrunch paper and cotton rag and newsprint. And so I did a lot of those same things too, but then I added the few extras, the ones that I mentioned. And there's some differences between what Tracy did and what I did because, but it's still just a sample book. And I used this little really wide spine. Now, true story, I originally had 3 signatures, but I had to take out the center signature because my first signature was so fat. You can see my first signature is here. But this one, Tracy, it says she intends to make more videos. And so I'll use whatever I can, pages of this, and play along with Tracy because I'm sure we haven't exhausted that list that she created yet. So anyway, this was just today playing. And it was really a heck of a lot of fun. I did all of the things that Tracy did, except I forgot to put the charm and the bead on. I've got a spot for it, but I just forgot to put it on. So when I'm done with this video, I'm going to go do that. And then I'm going to check and see postage stamps. If I didn't, because postage stamps had cool texture. If I didn't include it, I will. So those are the 2 things that may not be here. And I'm going to do like a super, super quick flip through. This one was stenciling in a couple layers, but I also added washi. Now, Wendy talked about washi, and Tracy had a whole page of washi. But I also tried to add just little bits and pieces of washi here and there. So this is texture, stencils with different colors and different stencils, and then stamps and from Sue, and then washi from Wendy. So it's just a little bit, and you can't, I don't know how well you can see it here, but there's a shimmer spray, like Wink of Stella, basically, on top of this, and that was for Gail. A couple different layers of stencils, stamp and stencil mix. One of the things on Tracy's list is punches, and so I just used circle punches to make this little border. Okay, this kind of, in Tracy's video number 3, I think, she talks about a video Wendy from Wendy's Journal Adventures did about a year ago on 10 ways to use tabs, because tabs is, or maybe it was the first video. It was one of Tracy's videos. She talks about the video Wendy did about 10 ways to use tabs. And so I went to Wendy's video, Squirrel, and I did tabs in there. And this is part of it. And so but you've got to go check out Wendy's video because she does a fabulous job. So check out Tracy's 5 videos and check out Wendy's video. And if you haven't had a chance to look at Marlise's video and Sue's video and Gail's, please do, because they are all kinds of wonderful ideas. So Wendy had 10 ideas. I'm going to flip back and forth here because I did all 10 of them. And here we go. Okay, so I'll go back and forth like this. It's kind of funky. So one was using a tab punch, and so here's the tab punch. And then 2 was a paper scrap, and that's here. 3 was a circle punch, and that's here. Number 4 was either using small ephemera and or a tag, so I did both. I used the tag. Now remember, these are edges, punches on the edges, but I just kind of layered them here rather than on the edge of the page, though you can see I kind of like lifted it just to make them all in one spot. All right, a fake flower or crochet. I didn't have any fake flowers, but I had a really fun crocheted flower. So crocheted flower was number 5. Fabric was number 6, and here's just a piece of, I don't even know, it's not burlap, it's some kind of a cotton cloth, kind of cool. Fabric, lace, and then Wendy layered some lace, and there's some layered lace. Number 8 was paper, like a paper scrunchy thing, and here's a little itty bitty paper scrunchy thing. Number 9 was a coin protector, and this is a coin protector, and it actually opens so you can take the piece out. And then number 10 was vellum or transparency, and she used vellum in hers, but I chose to use transparency film, but you could also use coffee dyed tracing paper. So there are the 10 that Wendy shared, and then I did 2 more because just she suggested doing more. And this one is paper clip, and this is a double-sided paper clip, and it's got some more of that some book tape on it, which is another thing that Tracy mentions in one of her 5 videos as book spine. And then embossing glaze, embossing powder, crystal nouveau glaze on there, and then so a paper clip as an edge or a spine, and then an envelope. So this is just a little envelope, but I've tucked it out a little bit to use it as a page edge or a tab, basically. And so I added a couple more to Wendy's, but it was, check out Wendy's video. I'll put the link below, and I'll put the links to Tracy's video if I'll remember to do it. All right. So label tape, and this is die cuts. So just the added layer of die cuts adds texture and dimension. And Tracy talked about making a fabric tag, and that's what this is, a fabric edge. It's similar to one of the things Wendy did, but it's, you know, a little bit different too. Tags, different size tags is one of the things Tracy talked about. Here's more tags. And before I went to Wendy's video, I did what Tracy said and used tabs in a couple different ways. You know, the whale tail punch and some cardboard, and then a paper scrap with a bit of lace over it. And tickets, tags and tickets. And here, one of the things Tracy did was collage, and she collaged with a couple different kinds. Here's collage with a, not collage, decoupage. That's the word I'm looking for, decoupage. Here's decoupage with a pattern, you know, sewing pattern. Here's decoupage with some napkin. Here's decoupage with the rest of that napkin. And then this is also plain tracing paper, and I crunched it up. Not tracing paper, tissue paper, plain tissue paper, and then napkin. And then the last one was with a coffee filter, and then I put some real leaves on top of it and just kind of cleared, not Mod Podge, Tim Holtz, this stuff, collage medium. That's it. So that one on the back there. So that was another suggestion that she had. Keeping going here. One of the things I chose is authentic ephemera. Like I said, today is my birthday, and I got a couple people brought me coffee. So I saved those coffee bits and put it right in my book. And I also used that old-fashioned label tape to put the date right on here. And again, it's not super bulky, but it adds some really cool texture and dimension. Tracy, one of the things she did was like this strip, this fabric strip, and it's really kind of cool. I put that in there. And this is that Italian book paper, or Italian something or other paper with net paper. And then here are those middle ones. She talked about a tag, and then one of the things was a punch. So this is just a little punched out flower with mixed media. This is my form of mixed media. I've got some sparkle on here, I've got some stamping, I've got ink, I've got a painted flower, I've got the label, so a little bit of mixed media thrown in there. And then here, this one, I absolutely had so much fun. This is Tim Holtz wallpaper, and this is a Tim Holtz frame, and this is a Tim Holtz person, and this is a Tim Holtz label, and these are Tim Holtz tiny attachers, and I kind of went all kinds of Tim Holtz there. I just pulled out my bin. And these pieces are really thick. So what I did is I just took a layer off of those pieces. I mean, they're still thick in here, but I removed a layer of them and I've got that dimension. And I chose this little guy because one of my great friends, Christy Banks, has 5 boys. And this little guy reminds me, okay, her boys are men now, and they'd probably shoot me, but he reminds me of them, and he's pretty darn handsome. So anyway, so some wallpaper and some chipboard, basically. Those are included in there, and also some these are brads, but they're fabric fasteners. And this was the original more tabs that Tracy was talking about, but I also included something else. This is transparency film, and I put some little wishing seeds in there and included those because it's fairly flat, but again, it adds some texture and dimension. And then the last of those tickets, negative space. So Tracy has die cuts on her list, but also negative space creates really cool texture. This is a Tim Holtz piece that's already punched for you, but this is just the negative space of a die with some book page behind it. I do this pretty frequently, have been for a long time. But it adds, if you touch it, it adds really cool dimension, even though it's fairly flat because it's recessed. And here, one of the things I did was sanding. So I took the same piece of paper. Here it is. It's just a little bit of ink on the paper. And here I've sanded the top layer off. And I don't know how you can see that, but you get a really cool effect when you use an emery board or sandpaper and sand it. And then this little guy down here, it's got some more glaze for dimension, but also I just took a paper clip and used that collage medium and made that his body to add, it's fairly flat, but it adds more texture and dimension. And then these are the ones I was talking about with Wendy. And the back here, again, collage. Tracy talks a lot about collage and how you can utilize collage. This is just a little collaged piece, and this is just a little collaged piece, but I put it on a paper clip. And then more of the stenciling and stamping. So I stamped the background and I stenciled in a couple different colors there. And same thing here. This is just some stenciling with different colors. That was a lot of fun to play with. One of the things that Tracy mentioned was different ways to put strips down there. She's got fabric and paper and lace. And so I did a couple combinations. I think this is coming out here. A couple combinations. I did lace only. I did fabric only. I did fabric and lace. And it was really enjoyable. This is just, a piece of a big old hole in it, pillowcase. And put that right on there. And here is just a small little mini cluster of one of those fabric clusters. This is just stamped image, stamped background with, again, mixed media, some watercolors, some sparkle, and stamped image, embossed. Okay, there's embossed and debossed. So this is just dry embossed with ink on top so that you could see it, and it adds very light but really cool texture. And this is the other side, the back side of it, the debossed side. So I put them next to each other so you could I could see and feel the difference. And remember, this is a sample book to remind me of what to use. Another thing I added is this really cool paper that is for cross stitch or stitch paper. And it's easy to tear and it's fun to use because it adds a really cool texture. And then the book spine, that's another one of Tracy's videos. And here, this is just a piece of the book spine made into a little bit of collage and then stamping and just layering, just creating some tags with some layers and some stenciling and stamping. And I played with one of those Tim Holtz things. It's happy birthday, HBTY, happy birthday to you. So I crossed it off and put me because this was a really fun way to spend my birthday. All right, here, texture and dimension. This is, let's see if I'm telling you the wrong one. This is just plain old white pigment ink through a stencil. And then I used some of the Seth Apter Vintage Beeswax that I love. I wanted to see what kind of a color it would look on black paper with white. And then this is more of that book page spine and then some pattern paper because that was another thing she'd listed. And I really like the image or the texture and the look it gives with the embossing powder on there. Here's just some different kinds of paper. She talks about clusters and dyes and such, and here's embossing glaze as opposed to embossing powder. But this is kind of like a metallic paper with sparkle in there. This is an eco-dyed paper. This is actually velvet paper, and here is rice paper, Japanese rice paper. So there's a whole bunch of different textures just with the papers that were used. And Tracy talked about, she calls them clusters. I call these button spots, and I call these clusters, but they're the same darn thing. You can call them anything you want. So Tracy has a video with clusters, and this is my fabric cluster with button that I made. And then again, showing the difference for me between a cluster and a button spot. This one was way cool. I used the stencils, but I used the underside. So I put the stencil down kind of like we did when we were in school and we took leaves and we did leaf rubbings. I did the same thing here. This is just some really thin writing paper, and then this was a little bit thicker, that cotton rag paper that Tracy suggested. And I really like the effect, and I just used my pencil, and I really like the effect that that gives. That was fun. And then here's my washi. So the layered washi, and then Tracy has the washi as around twine as like little flaps or tags. And then layered, you can layer washi that way. And this is two more different types of textured paper. This is a canvas paper, which has kind of got really fun texture. And this is just handmade paper, plain old handmade paper. Again, more texture. On the back here, Tracy had made a tag with punched a bunch of holes, and so I just used the edge punch to make some texture that way. These two, I don't know how well you can see it, but this is just a plain piece of black cardstock, and here's the exact same cardstock using the beeswax pellets. I've had them for a couple years and I'd never used them, and I finally used it today, and it gives a different look and a different texture, and it's very different than the embossing powder texture or the glaze texture, so it's really cool. And then this woven paper, the lady I mentioned, in her book she used fibers to make a weaving, and I thought, well, I can just do the same thing with paper scraps, because Lord knows I've got those. And that was kind of fun because it gives you, again, the texture and dimension. All right, Tracy talked about layering pieces, and you can't turn me away from a good cluster, so that's what this is. It's got glaze on it, it's got a ticket, it's got lace, it's got lots of texture because of the different layers of pieces. And this was another version of what she calls cluster, and I call button spots. You know, fabric, I've got wool here and upholstery fabric and a little bit of lace, and instead of putting a button, I used a brad to hold it all together, and then the glaze and then the flat image. So the different textures there just kind of really make it fun. All right, so on the other one I used, I don't know if you can see that, this was the white, the Hero Arts, doesn't matter which kind, just white pigment paper, ink, stenciled, and Seth After Vintage Beeswax. Here it is with embossed with just detail clear embossing powder. So you can see the same thing. That vintage beeswax gives you a vintagey look, where this just gives you a really cool white look. And again, you're just using pattern paper to add texture, the visual texture that the image gives. And this was, I didn't do all of them, but no, not collage medium. This one was Grit Paste Snowfall. Tim Holtz has a lot of, you should watch some of his videos too, because the man is just amazing. But this was just Grit Paste Snowfall, and I learned a couple things. Where it's thicker, where it's thin, you can see the black through it. So again, it gives it a blue appearance. Where it's thicker, it gives it more of a white appearance. But because of the way I set it, it's almost like a vintagey thing. And again, more washi. But I thought it was really cool. And if you touch it, it's got this really cool texture. But it's not super thick. So this is a folded over piece of lace scrap on more of that embroidery cross-stitch paper. And Tracy had used packaging tape, and this is packaging paper, and I'd gotten this in the mail with something, and there were stamped flowers on it, so I saved it because it was really pretty. But the just cardboard and smooshed down cardboard, it gives a really cool texture, and you can see it's not super thick. And then here, just a bunch of different things to add. So I've got some tissue paper and the faux tape made with alcohol inks and just office tape. And then the cross-stitch paper, and then piano roll, and then old German book page. So just those different layers, which was one of the elements, but also the different textures that they offer. And here, Tracy talked about ruffles and such. And she did things like she gathered and folded and creased, and I don't even remember what words she used. I even wrote them down because I knew I wouldn't remember. Gather and pleat and fold and scrunch. Me, I just shoved it through the machine and hoped for the best. So if you're wanting really good effects, Tracy's is fabulous. But I did those different ones here. Here's with pattern paper, and here's with regular paper. And that's it. So that's what I did today in plain. And no, so I didn't put the stamps in there. And I need to do the postage stamps because that'll add cool texture. And also the charms, the dangly bead charm things. All right, so that is my Tracy play. And that was a whole lot of fun. And I got lucky. I belong to a group that does cross stitch and for cards. And I won a kit. And it's called Stitchable Cards, cross-stitching, stitchablecards.com. And so I thought I'd show this kit that I won and show you what you get. So it came with this really cool bag. And then you saw that paper there. That's perfect for, these are the people at Stitchable Cards. And it came with some glue tape. It came with cards and envelopes. Came with really cool, so that's the same type of paper, but in shapes. Stitchable cards, perforated paper. It came with all kinds of different thread and yarn, and it gives you the numbers on what to do. And then it came with this pattern. So I can make, they gave me the thread I need to make this, and I can either put it on a card, or in my case, I'd stick it in a junk journal. But I thought that was really, really cool. And then it comes with some paper and looks like some labels and some transfers and some sticky back stuff and all kinds of things. Now I have no idea what the kit costs because I didn't look into it, but if you're interested and if you like to stitch or you want to add that extra texture and dimension to your projects, this might be a great source for you. And again, it's stitchablecards.com. And I don't know their policies, procedures, if they ship overseas, no idea, but it's really cool and I'm looking forward to playing with that. All right, last thing, and then I will go. Because it's my birthday, I decided to share. One of my favorite things to do with scraps, as you guys know, is clusters, but also die cuts. So I ordered some of my favorite dies. This is the Layered Owl from Simon Says Stamp. Now, I love Tim Holtz's dies, but I also like Simon Says Stamp's dies. And then the poppy stem, and then the fresh daisies. So for 3 random people that comment on this, watch and comment on this video, I will mail these. And I believe I'll be able to mail them internationally just because they're so flat. It's one of the reasons I chose dies. And Australia right now, I was able to mail something to Sue in Australia, and I hadn't been able to before. So I believe I'll be able to mail this internationally, so that shouldn't be a problem. So thank you very much for watching. I appreciate all the kind comments and all the birthday wishes. Take care all and happy creating.